IDBM Challenge, Season 1, Episode 3. You know, education is not really about following the rules or finding the right answers. It's more about becoming aware of your bubble and bursting those. And in this episode, we spoke with Jani Leinonen about bursting bubbles and in general being disobedient. Enjoy! Hello, welcome to another episode of Yellow Vacuum Cleaner. We are here with Jani Leinonen in his studio. Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks. I didn't know this was the topic, but it's cool.
Surprise!
Yes.
For those of us, or for those viewers who don't know who you are, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm an artist. I make political pop art, but I don't know, there's not really like it's a pretty vague description of what I do. Sometimes it's, I guess, a little bit activist stuff on the other hand, but then on the other side there's also just like nice paintings that I want to make and I just paint them, so there's not necessarily always a big political idea behind the works.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't know, we human beings do a lot of different kinds of things and maybe sometimes they're even contrary stuff, but maybe I'm more known of the political stuff than the rest of
Mm. When did you if we backtrack a bit, when did you realize that this was I don't know if it's your calling or...
What, art?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, really young. I mean, I was like 8 or 6 years old. Of course, I didn't know what art was then, but that's I thought it was something cool, and it was really conservative art that I kind of admired back then. But still, you know, I mean, since there's a lot of if my art looks like this. So I think when I was 8 years old, I was drawing similar looking things, you know, everything that I saw around me, posters, movie posters and advertisements and stuff like that. I wasn't really thinking anything else, but they were just like interesting visually, but I mean, I guess I'm actually doing the same stuff. But maybe, you know, the content or the taking a stand or the values have sort of developed since I was 8. At least I hope.
Can you actually tell a bit about the box? I mean, what's behind that?
Well, the whole thing?
Yeah, the blue one.
Well, so it's going to be a painting of 6 packages, and they're going to be stacked together like this. And they're just painting on top of the packages. So there's a original cereal package underneath, and then some of these things have just been painted over to, you know, well, obviously it doesn't have the dew on top of it. So, but what does it have? Well, it has frosties, of course. So it's going to form a sentence that says, do you want the truth that hurts or the lie that comforts? And they're just going to be, here's the lie. This is not finished yet, but yeah, so it's kind of a combination of real objects from real world and then these fictional things, and I kind of paint on top of it.
What is some topics that fascinates you right now, or what is going on in your work?
God, difficult questions. I don't know. Well, of course, you know, you read the news, you follow the conversations in social media, so there's a lot of stuff. I guess there's, well, like ethical, ecological things, but I guess, well, because it's so up to date and terrible, and also kind of depressing debate about like how racist the world or society still is. And I think sort of my own standing point, it's like the white privilege that I have, and we all of us white people have in a society that's kind of a built focusing on white people's interests and kind of a, how do I say, the general population. So it's kind of a, I don't know, I guess they're a little bit reflected. I guess the white privilege as a word, it's like everybody kind of, especially us white liberal people, I don't know how liberal you guys are, but kind of agree with it, and it's there, but then it's like you, especially in like your Facebook page discussions, you end up, all these white friends of yours just like kind of denying it. I mean, they started like, yes, I know it's there, but, and then they start kind of diminishing it and saying like, I'm like poor and I don't have privileges and stuff like that. So it's kind of a, I don't know, it's interesting. I guess the real phenomenon behind, or what I'm interested in, is actually the way that, well, maybe it's actually about this, like the truth that hurts or the lie that comforts. So it's kind of this how people explain the bad things, especially if they're themselves involved, away with like, maybe it's not white privilege, maybe it's something else, and maybe it's I'm not a racist, and I've never said anything bad about it, so I don't have white privilege. So it's like all this kind of a mess of explanation going around which is like the lie that comforts in a way, but the ugly truth behind it is that, well, of course we white people are very privileged.
And isn't it also so that, we are being conditioned to this, like on a daily basis?
Yeah. I mean, it's of course like when all your friends are white, and especially if you don't know any members of minorities, you have no idea what it is, because you only see the white life, and you're born and trained and educated in white schools, and the history is written by the white people, celebrating the white inventors and historical figures. So it's kind of this, it's like a really big bubble that kind of closes everything else out, so it's difficult to burst also.
So if that's the change you want to participate in, how can you make the world a better place, having that as a background? not a
Yeah, I have a short answer to that.
Okay, I will tone the question down a bit.
No, it's fine, we can talk about it, but it's a long talk.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess like it's how would you say? I mean, like as artists, I can mostly talk about from my perspective, because that's what I know. Also, us, like we're kind of educated as these. Well, it's kind of the art world's like focused around the artists, so we're in a way these like weird heroes, or we're kind of trained to be these heroes and sort of saviors, and we can talk about everything, especially like us white straight men who are artists. So it's I guess it's kind of been a serious look in the mirror also, to kind of realize that why do I have this idea that I can talk about like a specialist about like every topic, even though I have like no clue about it. And so it's kind of, maybe that's like, once you realize that you have to burst your own bubble and kind of try to look outside of it and talk to different kinds of people, and then you I guess start realizing that maybe I'm not a specialist in everything, and maybe I should be culturally sensitive to all sorts of directions, and maybe we should have like a diversity in also like creating things, because that's like, I mean, how I like get ideas is to talk to as like diverse people as possible, and you kind of get their their perspective, and then they just melt, and then maybe something good comes out of it. But I guess this kind of a white savior idea, which quite often happens, especially in the West, we want to save the Africa and collect money, and we without even realizing it, kind of how would I say, at least victimize like other cultures. Think about charity organizations. Like when they design their campaigns, it's always the suffering African, even though there's like the truth is totally something else. It's not like poor, and it's not suffering, and it's not. There's a lot of suffering white people here too, but they're not shown in the pictures. So it's kind of, because it's really about like media representations, media pictures, and everything that I basically work with. So it's kind of, trying to be critical about it, and I always have, but like recently I've actually realized that there's so many blind spots that you just can't kind of overcome until you actually talk to somebody who's...
So what has recently burst your bubble, as you said earlier?
Well, this is really personal, but I'm gonna say it anyway. For a year and a half, I've been in a relationship with a Roma girl. So that's like, I guess, one of the kind of biggest realizations when you actually start dating and loving somebody who's from a different culture, but yet she's Finnish. She's Finnish Roma, and they're like the kind of most, how would I say, intolerated minority group in Finland. So you kind of start seeing things from her perspective, and how all the media representations of Finnish Roma are like written and played by white actors and creators. So they're all these they're comedy characters, and they're repeating the stereotypes that they're criminals and hustling horses and cars and stuff like that, which is like this weird fiction that's created by the white majority about this one minority that's been kicked in the head for 500 years. So it's like you're like, fuck, like that's what I grew up with, and I know all the jokes, and I can speak like a gypsy, with this Pirkka-Pekka Petelius style, and so it's it's got nothing to do with how the real Roma speak. So it's kind of just this kind of weird white fantasy of a minority, which is crazy, and it's only now that I realize it.
So our students, they're actually going to work in multidisciplinary teams.
Yeah.
Or not just multidisciplinary, multicultural teams. Do you have some advice or something you would like them to, or how they can work better together, or questions they should ask each other, or something that can better help them in a multicultural setting?
Well, I don't know. I guess the fact that they're working together is great, and I think that just resolves a lot of problems. So, well, I don't know. I guess just listening to each other about that stuff, and kind of not think that you're the one who knows better. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think if it is a diverse group, I think that's already a great thing. So, I don't think there's like a
one correct answer or way to go.
Yeah, and it depends so much like what it is. It's what's the project about, and what are the aims.
But I think one of the cool is a bit kind of dodgy word, but uncovering or bursting these bubbles, I think that's quite important. Especially when you think about design, or like whenever you introduce some solutions that you think that this is gonna save the world or make it a better place, it's always from one perspective. And like, for example, this one, when you were talking about kind of this seeing things from a different person's perspective, I don't know if they still have them, but like the Finnish ID cards, like they are like different colors. There's like is it like for adults, they are blue, it's light blue. Then kids are green, and then those with a residence permit, like foreigners, they are like light brown.
Yeah.
And I think the reasoning was that border control people can easily distinguish like who is a kid and who's an adult, which I think is completely...
It's like a segregation system.
Exactly. And so the point being is that, you know, what I think you kind of touched upon earlier is that we are still kind of lagging behind with this visual literacy. So we are being bombarded by all these kind of political messages, and we just let them sink in.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for an elaborated reply.
Yeah, of course.
That was the time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is everywhere, but and it's not only like ethnicity things. Of course, it's like I mean, it's like commercial messages and I mean everything kind of, you know, we're being influenced all the time. So it's not like the easiest task to, you know, stay above it because you're so within it. And I think also it's really important to understand that you can't really stay outside of it, and you can't. I mean, I can never understand what it is to be like a Finnish Roma or a Somalian guy who moved to Finland, because, you know, I mean, I can listen and I can, you know, learn and I can, you know, do stuff like that. But it's, of course, I've been born white in this like really rich country, and I'm like super well educated, and I have amazing parents who have supported me, and it's just like from the birth I've been in a different kind of place. So it's like it's like kind of all the nuances in me are like, well, let's say white and privileged. So I guess we should just also realize that it's impossible to understand totally what it is to be something else than this in all aspects. So and you just have to kind of live with it. So I think that's kind of also the white savior idea, is that we kind of, once we just, you know, dig into it and we just study so much and we kind of, you know, we learn and we ask questions and we can, you know what racism feels like, but I don't think that's really the case. And of course it's like kind of gives you a helpless feeling because you're just you're an outsider, but that's the way it works. So but I guess what you were saying about the visual bombarding and all sorts of bombarding that we experience is that you just, well, like for instance, I guess with my works, I kind of try to think of them and maybe change the message into something else and like rethink it differently, and of course depending on the concept. I'm supposed to go to China to have an exhibition, and there was and this invitation came just like this morning basically, and I started thinking like this sentence or like what's that song, do you want the truth or something beautiful? So it's like so it's an idea that I kind of, it's here, and I wanted to do like a big painting of it, and I wasn't really thinking China before, but once you take that sentence into Chinese context, you know, of course the first question is like, okay, is that even allowed in China? Like, does it talk about, you know, the propaganda system and so on? Like, what are they going to say about it? Even though the initial thing was maybe more talk about like the capitalist propaganda system, which is much more invisible and like seemingly free. But yeah, so but that's what I do quite often. Like once you have an idea, you just take the same idea to different contexts and you see change, and it means totally something else. And yeah, it's there was this really interesting story about this, like since you guys are, I guess, training like engineers and what's the combination again? But there was this really interesting story in The Guardian about this like artificial intelligence that learns languages, and the method that it learns from like internet texts is that it kind of, you know, checks words that are close to each other, and it starts understanding like the reference, like Tokyo is to Japan, like Helsinki is to Finland, for instance. So it starts making these connections and meanings, but and it's really efficient and amazing, like artificial intelligence that learns really quickly the languages. But once I started studying the kind of ethics behind the language that it learned, was that, you know, then when you start checking like gender issues or like chauvinism or sexism or racism, it learns them sort of in like exaggerated way. So it's kind of like a nurse to a doctor is like a woman to a man. So it's kind of learned these like weird sort of super sexist and like unequal kind of meanings for the words at the same time, because it was basically just listening to the words. So, but the story was interesting because it's you know, science and it's invention, and they said this is like a brilliant invention. Yes, in a way it's brilliant, but it actually if you want to make it, how would I say, like it would actually change the word for better, it would kind of correct those mistakes and not repeat them, repeat the racism that, you know, exists in the texts that it reads, or it probably randomly takes them, but still it's there, and not repeat the sexism that is there. And so it's, I mean, once we're talking about engineering and like inventing new ideas in general, there kind of has to be this, I think we should always think about like ethics and morals, and like, because you know, I mean, it's an artificial intelligence, you don't know what it's going to be, but I think still the responsibility is with the inventors to kind of, you know, realize that, okay, this is a failure in this sense, so we gotta kind of, you know, try to make it something else, that maybe it would develop the language to something more equal society, and not like a worse society.
Oh, and that's like one of the crucial aspects, like, because like the taking into account the ethical aspect of technology, because everyone is saying we have this discourse right now that, you know, technology is advancing faster and faster, but no one is really addressing the ethical aspects. Like one idea, like, would be super nice to have, like, when like a CEO of a major company, for example, is giving a talk, like a press release, there would be a machine, like this old school robot looking thing, that would correct your the speech in real time, you know, if they are being sexist or like kind of segregating, or then it would, so like real time translation.
I think that it does exist almost. It's like the internet.
Wow. Touché.
Okay, next topic.
Okay, part 2.
Well, I mean, it necessarily doesn't work, and the CEO might not listen, you know, to the feedback. But I mean, I think that's the good thing about the internet community, that it actually does do like checkups on stupid things. Yeah. And, you know, like the tech company sexist bosses that have been harassing women and hiring men, and only white men basically, to the companies. It's like a kind of I guess it's an undeniable problem. But yeah, sure, it would be.
Okay. How do you think the tech companies that you mentioned, or business in general, what can they learn from the world of art? How can you merge those disciplines in a nice way?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know, should they even be merged?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's like, I don't believe artists are like solving the biggest problems of the society. Sure, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of artists. I'm sure the number of bad guys in the artistry is as high as in the general population. So I'm not like putting hopes on the artists, but what I think art could do, and like many, or philosophy or something that's not, you know, that's sort of outside the business sphere, is exactly kind of, you know, maybe sort of think about or introduce, or somebody should introduce. I don't think, maybe it's not artist's job to introduce the kind of ethical thinking into these processes of creating new killer apps or killer techniques, because it hardly ever is there, I think. Like when you think about like the big well, I don't know, these are like really bad examples and everybody knows their problems, like Uber and Airbnb and many other companies like that. I think they're just sort of invented to think that, okay, yes, we're gonna make money and this will change the world, but then the question is like, will it change it for worse or better? And like in terms of like gentrification, Airbnb has been a total catastrophe, and that's why it's been banned in so many places. But it's kind of like, I'm sure there's like, not all the results of the business is not like foreseeable, but I think there should be at least some kind of thinking of the future, what it does to the society. But or there is, and these people just don't give a shit, and they just don't mind that their tax monies, or especially they like the fact that the taxes are as low as possible and their contribution to society is like as little as possible, and the money that they make is as big as possible. So it's kind of this, I mean, I think like the big invention would be also changing the world in an ethical way too. But I think it's not really changing the world, otherwise it's more destroying it.
So our students, they will also think about future scenarios, and like with the new space race and space business, how will it change life on Earth in 20 years from now, 30 years from now? How should they think about ethics and moral in this kind of setting?
In that kind of setting?
Yeah, in this
space.
kind of in making
I'm sure
future
all
scenarios.
the problems that we have here on Earth will exist in space as well. So, you know, I mean, I don't know what it is. It's not like a clear table, or I guess you can think about it as a clear table. So maybe you can, you know, kind of start from erasing, or at least trying to, you know, get rid of the problems that exist here. But yeah, I don't know, that's you have all these like really small questions for me.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let's say, so what is art?
yeah,
Start there.
exactly. But I don't know, I mean, they're like super complex things, but I think ethics should always be involved in whatever, you know, you're thinking about. And but also, I mean, like less of this, like, because usually when inventors or whoever think a lot of themselves, like me, when we start like solving problems, we really kind of think of ourselves as these like saviors. So that's also kind of bad attitude sometimes, until you actually listen to somebody else who has a, you know, different point of view, and maybe what I think is like saving somebody actually is on the long run maybe causing more destruction. Like, you know, like Well, okay, maybe stupid example, but again, like the charity organizations that are sort of, like helping Africa. Yeah, they are helping Africa, but on the other hand, the charity work and all that PR bullshit about the poverty and disease, this like kind of like again makes the people who live in that continent look really bad, and it kind of here in the West also like stops us from really thinking the roots of the problems, which are much more in the economical system that's kind of just taking cheap labor and materials and minerals from those areas where suddenly the poverty exists, and we benefit from it, and this kind of idea that we give some money to charity just kind of covers it up. We feel like we've done our share, and now we can consume as much as we want. So I think it's the ethics, but also you gotta really you have to see the big picture. Like there is like massive systems that cause massive problems, and once we try to fix a little bit of it, it might just kind of cover up the bigger problem that exists. So it's like you really have to think big and kind of combine different fields of study in order to kind of find the real problems. So I don't think it's like you solve one thing and then that's it, but you really gotta kind of look everywhere.
Yeah, and I guess like one of the kind of sickest ideas is this companies and different kind of organizations talking about sustainable growth, which I think is an awful paradox in a way. Like how can growth be sustainable with like limited resources?
Yeah.
I guess I had a thought back there. But
There is something called circular economy. That was hard. Do you know anything? No, forget that then.
Well, you can explain it.
The thing is, I cannot explain it very well. It's the idea that we should create, instead of the capitalistic consumerism, we should replace it with an economy that's sustainable. But I cannot explain it in details. But it's a term that is.
Well, there's the zero growth idea, but I guess the problem with many of these like new economics ideas is that it's like because for so long, no matter has it been like a Cold War or era ideology for like communism or capitalism, both sides kind of believed in the growth. So it wasn't it wasn't an ideological sort of a thing back then, and everybody just both sides wanted ideologically also like internal growth. But back then nobody realized that what happens or that the resources are limited. But I think the biggest problem is that like what do you do when because all the business ideas and theories are based on the growth, so nobody really. There's no theories on like what happens to society when you have zero growth, because it's like there's just no. I mean that's a depression, and everybody's just trying to get rid of that. So that's sort of like a no man's zone, theoretically and practically at this point. So I think that's where the kind of studies would need to be like how would you actually create it the way that it would be sustainable?
Do you have any ideas?
No, sorry.
I mean, it's okay if you don't want to reveal them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. The book's coming out next year.
How do you deal with criticism and different reviews of your work?
Well, I mean, for a long time I tried to be this Teflon person who wasn't really into it, and it didn't really touch me at all. And then from the other point of view, because I wanted to provoke like, you know, sometimes maybe even rage and irritation and but at least the debate. So it was good, the critique, like whatever comes out of it, it was good. But I don't know, I guess it kind of depends where it comes from. If it comes from your enemy, we usually are fine with the critique, and we're like, yes, like they hate me even more. But then if it's like your friend or companion that gives you the critique, then it's, I guess it's really kind of then it might hurt. But yeah, but still, I mean, it's part of the process. I think that's because I think art is like science, at least like my work, that, you know, it's in the process of, you know, it's in the process of change all the time. So whatever I do, I don't think this is like the final thing that I do and this is it. But it's like, well, when I get the critique, I'm like, okay, the next work I will do better and different. And then, so it's like the failure is not, it's good in a way, or the critique is good because that only like pushes you forward. So, but I think the critique hurts only when you're kind of burned out. So it's like, watch out for that. Don't take holidays as well.
What made you do the School of Disobedience? What drove you there, and what are your thoughts behind that?
Well, yeah, I guess. Well, I guess. Well, you know, you're looking at things around you, and you see what happens, and it was kind of an accident that it actually happened just after the government had changed into this current super conservative, racist, xenophobic government. But of course you had seen it before, that's kind of the direction that things are going. But I mean, this sort of apathy, I think, was there, that, you know, and it wasn't, people weren't that active generally in other fields, and well, neither were the artists. So I thought that there's totally, in order to make this society better, we need to, I mean, I can't be the one, and, you know, the marginal activist groups are not enough to change it, but we need like masses of people to do stuff. So I thought, like, let's found a school, and yeah, that's I guess how the, you know, idea came up. But I think it kind of also, I mean, the ideas had been there all the time. Like, I've been doing this work for 15 years and like trying this there and trying that strategy there. So I think I guess also the idea was that I kind of want to give these ideas to everybody else to use, to like sort of like open source art ideas in a way that, you know, you can just please take them and, you know, alter them and change them and do something in society to, you know, to stop this nonsense that's going on. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay, so
I don't know, but I think there's still a great need, and it was open for 6 months, and there were so many, and most of the people who visited were actually like kids from schools that teachers were bringing there, and I love that idea that it's like we have this future generation that's like a kind of thinking these things already, and, you know, facing them, and they're like not like just told to be obedient, and like we have to say to them that, you know, that you gotta be disobedient, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, this disobedience, but it might be actually the best thing you do, but you can't be disobedient just for the sake of disobedience. Again, you have to have like the ethics involved. You gotta think about like what's one of the set of like moral codes that you follow, and then if somebody breaks them, if somebody's racist in a bus, if somebody's sexist in school or at your workplace, you gotta say it out loud that, you know, that's not okay. So, yeah.
So what is the school of the future?
School
of future. We're trying to make the university of future.
Well, I think school is always for the future, I guess, in a way.
How would you design it?
I don't know.
If you had like complete freedom.
There are these like 70s, 60s utopian ideas where the governments always, they have like philosophers, like politicians have been kicked out, and there's like scientists, philosophers and artists that are in the governments. And I like that idea because it's not about, or I don't know what it is about, but I guess it's kind of, the more you start digging into these things, it's kind of the bigger picture you start seeing, and how the better you combine different fields and different ideas, the kind of more creative and bigger ideas you can actually get. Because I think it's in the combination of, you know, sort of different fields, knowledges that you can. So I guess that would be the thing that I would focus in the school of future. That,
so,
you know,
collaboration, combining.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there needs to be like people who like know specific things and they're like really know their stuff. But I think the big thing that we need is still like to do these coherent collaborations between those fields. That somebody knows kind of, or knows how to bring these people together from different fields. I guess that's what you're doing a little bit too, or a lot.
Gently.
We're trying.
Yeah.
Attempting.
Pushing, yeah.
I'm attempting.
Yeah.
Success.
I think we have too many successful people.
Dot. Okay. Business.
It's a blank. That's interesting. Well, cereal.
Oh.
You said I could say just a word.
Yeah.
So I take that easy way out.
Oh, that's good. Innovation.
Oh my god, that's such a horrible. That's like I mean, it's such a cliche that I don't even want to start talking about it anymore.
So we're not gonna add it to IM. Innovation.
Innovations and other cliches.
all the bullshit bingo.
Yeah.
Space.
Final frontier.
Technology.
Yeah, it's like a two-bladed sword. It's really interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated about like new inventions and new technology, but yet I guess the stuff that I said previously, it's like it also troubles, because it's not neutral. It's always like a biased in a way.
Strategy.
I don't have one.
Design.
That's not a trendy word. Innovation design is probably, you get money from all the grand applications. What else? what are there? But design is always, it's also, it's sort of, I think of it as it's a tool for political control too.
Design?
Yeah, designing things. Of course, you control, people's everyday surroundings by designing them to look a certain way. Designs are of course used quite a lot to, for instance, increase the consumerism and other things.
You're going meta level, yeah.
Yeah, but I think design, like, that's one of the first things that comes to my mind. It's like it is tool for power.
Okay, so future.
Let's go back.
Oh.
Yeah, well, whatever. It's. Can't wait for it.
Okay, so the serious stuff now.
Oh, these weren't serious.
No, that was just the pre.
Okay.
So,
It's like warm up.
yeah, IMDB.
IMDB. That's the like a movie database.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use it quite a lot. I don't have like I don't pay for it, but it's that's kind of cool. I don't know much about it. Why are you asking?
Okay, so the next word is IDBM.
Okay, which one? Did I confuse it?
No, you were spot on.
I don't know what that is. What is it?
So we need to change that. That is our program.
Oh, okay.
International design.
Yeah. That was funny.
Yeah.
You should make the logo the same.
Hey!
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Copy with pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an honor, right? In Asia.
Yeah.
You copy. That was it. Okay, can I add one now, like randomly? Okay, art.
Art.
I need to put that needle there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. Even I don't know what it is. So it's something bad. It's something good. You know. It's kind of. I guess it's like technology too. You know, whatever you use it for, it can be a tool for evil things or good things.
Can you say that logo, the sentence again?
The sentence?
Yeah.
Do you want the truth that hurts or the lie that comforts?
Can you say it to the camera? Seriously? Can I direct them?
Do you want the truth that hurts or the lie that comforts?